So this is the second short briefing. This one's on our department, our programs and our enrollments within the department. So our focus remains, even as we try and grow our research enterprise, on quality hands-on undergraduate programs. And we try and give students, I like this phrase, increasingly accurate approximations to real-world engineering practice. That is, we want their experiences. We'd like to graduate engineers, not just people with engineering degrees. We want them to be able to do engineering when they graduate. We want them to think of themselves as engineers. And we know there's some challenges there based on demographics and identity issues and the like. Different people come at, I'm an engineer differently. We're very proud that almost all of our students place regardless within a year. The ones who don't, there's usually something going on with their families. It's not because they can't get it. They're either a mature student with a family and they need to locate a certain location, or they're taking care of grandparents or something and they can't move. So it's usually family issues keep them being placed within a year, not the quality of their education. Certainly not the quality of their education. We lose touch with some. Foreign students, international students go back overseas, have no idea what happens to some of them. Longer term, the largest employees have been Boeing and Lockheed. Actually, the largest over all the different programs we've ever had is the Air Force. We used to have a lot more ROTC students than we have recently. But they certainly, again, have been a large number of our graduates. More recently, we've seen Collins Aerospace and Northrop Grumman be particularly aggressive in hiring. We've placed some students at Harris. Think with the Collins and Raytheon, I think that's great because, again, we like to place students in Raytheon. Honeywell, I know the dean has actually had some connections with Honeywell over on the West Coast. And so we'd like to see that grow. I know there are places it seems that our students ought to be placing and aren't. That said, we're also placing students in either initially as first hires or after a job or two at sites like Microsoft, Google, tech companies. We've got people working at YouTube and the like. I'm almost certain there's got to be somebody working at Apple, the number of graduates we've had over the years. We have 3 undergraduate engineering programs. Computer engineering and software engineering are very similarly structured. They each have 127 credits, and they have these 3 classes called specified electives that students can sort of make their own minor, if you will, how they want to fill those classes up. There's an electrical engineering program can be taken with either an avionics track or an aerospace systems track, or without specialization. And one of the things we're looking at in the near future is getting rid of tracks and concentrations and things like that. The computer science program, these numbers actually need to be updated, but I'm going to leave them like they are. There's actually 76 in the core now, and then you can take 6 off of most of those, except I think human factors or Homeland Security, or one of them anyway. We had to make some modifications after our ABET visit to increase the amount, to ensure that every area of concentration had both information security and network security. So we added those classes but changed some other things within the program. But the total number of hours really doesn't change overall, except for one of those tracks. It went up by 3. I think that was human factors. Again, we'd like to get rid of the specializations. The amount of, you look at all the 3 undergraduate engineering programs and the 5 flavors of computer science, you end up with 10 total different flavors of offerings, and that's just a lot to advise and to keep up with and the like. So these programs are all accredited by ABET, the engineering programs by the Engineering Accrediting Commission, and the computer science program by the Computing Accrediting Commission. And we had our visit this past September, late September, early October, and I'll give you more on the visit in our in-person meeting. We have some minors in computer science and ECE and systems engineering and cybersecurity engineering. Those are some of those are fairly well populated, often by students outside, of course, hopefully outside our programs, aerospace engineers and the like. Graduate programs, our first graduate program was the Master of Science in Software Engineering, then just called the Master of Software Engineering, started in 1992. Students can do a practicum or a project or a thesis. And as with all of our engineering graduate programs, there's an accelerated option. What program you can accelerate from depends. We have an electrical and computer engineering program, and you can do a double E track or a computer engineering track. Ideally, the double E track would be more communication, navigation, surveillance, and the computer engineering would be more along the controls, but that's not really written in stone. You can do it with a thesis or a project, and you can get there and accelerated from computer engineering or electrical engineering. We have one of the early Masters of Science in Cybersecurity Engineering, which we've had around now for 7 years, I want to say. You can do that either as a coursework or a project or a thesis option. And you can also get there from computer science and software engineering on an accelerated basis. There's a Master's of Science in Systems Engineering, also with thesis or project options. And it has different technical track or a management track. The manufacturing track actually never became extant, so that's not really happening. That was something we were working on with our friends in mechanical engineering, and that has yet to happen. I think we still talk about it every so often. But you can also get into it from any undergraduate engineering program. And then the college has this Master of Science in Unmanned and Autonomous Systems Engineering program that we stood up with aerospace and mechanical engineering getting close to a decade ago. Not quite that far back, but again, you can do a technical or a UAV or unmanned systems area of concentration. The unmanned systems was to allow people from the Bachelor of Science in Unmanned Systems, which is the College of Aviation's UAS program, to give them a path into this master's degree. We did the program review within the university this past year for that, and one of the outcomes there was that we're going to try and deprecate we want to focus on the autonomous part. I mean, the platforms, making either planes or quadcopters, or rotorcraft or aircraft, either one, fixed wing or rotary wing. That technology is, aerospace engineering has that. They're going to mess with that. They're going to do what they do with that. So the platform area is not really the interesting area is the autonomy. And so we want to upgrade this program to focus mainly on the autonomy area. And again, you have an accelerated option from engineering and also from this Bachelor of Science in Unmanned and Autonomous System Science. We started our doctorate in 2015. It's a research intensive. Some of our faculty are actually proposing to make it even more research intensive and cut that down from 6 classes to 4 classes, past the master's degree. We had our first graduate, Yifan Tian, in fall of 2019, and we're currently up to, I believe, 6 all but dissertation. That is, people who've presented their dissertation proposals successfully, but don't have a dissertation turned in yet. And so again, that's moving forward still. This is just a couple of the projects. Tian did privacy-aware imagery data analysis using Cloud Edge Hybrid Framework. Yap is doing microservice approach to unmanned systems traffic. And then Barbie is doing scenario-based development testing domain-specific language. She was working with Dr. Jafer on this aviation simulation language from which they built this air traffic control training system that for an FAA grant. So here's going to be the tables of program enrollments. Each of these are going to have two slides for each. One will be the numbers, raw numbers, and then the second will be graphic. So there'll be tabular data and then the graphic. And the graphic's going to have counts on the left, and it'll have percentages on the right. So you can see not only the raw number of students in the programs, but also how the programs space out according. So there'll be one for incoming students, one for degrees conferred, and then one for the full-time equivalents. So here's our incoming students over the last 10 years. And you can see we've had an increment up from the 40-ish area up into the 70-ish area, if you will, 70, 80, even a peak of 94 one time there. a little bit down this past year. Graduate programs, with us increasing the number of programs, you can just see that largely the number of incoming students has increased. And again, there was sort of an increment up the last about 5 years ago, and things have stayed up pretty much since then. When you look at that graphically, again, you can see that big increment in 2015, actually a sequence between 14 and 15. And that was really just a change in enrollment management personnel, better leadership. We're going through another change of that. They're bringing in as a VP for enrollment management the guy who's been managing enrollments at Worldwide, and he's been very successful there. Whether he'll be able to be as successful in a residential environment is yet to be seen. Again, you can also see as new programs, big bump in the number of PhD students between 17 and 18. That's increased with the number of our faculty hires and being able to support PhD research. Also, you can see the ECE program grow. Software engineering, was there, and it sort of held its own, although of course it occupies a smaller fraction over the years in the graduate program. But it's nice. One of the nice things about having a portfolio of programs is they sort of there's a little bit, if there is some independence among them in terms of enrollments, it's kind of average out, right? So one can go up and one can go down, and it keeps things kind of balanced. So in terms of degrees conferred, you can also see, even though you can see it, going up over the years as our enrollments go up. You can see the 2015 incoming spike start to graduate there in 18-19. You can also see the increase in the number of graduate enrollments just from having more programs. So you can see a steady increase in the number of people who are graduating every year. How that looks in terms of the raw numbers on the left and the percentages on the right. Again, you see now here's an interesting, you saw the incoming students come in. You see a lot come in computer science. A large number of a goodly enough number of them transfer into software engineering before they graduate, that the number of people graduating in software engineering remains larger than the number of people graduating in computer science. Software engineering and computer science are also programs of retreat from people like from aerospace engineering and the like. And so we're actually a net gainer in terms of enrollments over the years, in terms of being a net, as opposed to being a net loser from people who leave our programs. Again, graduate degrees conferred, you see them going up, and you won't see our first PhD graduate until next year's charts. Again, you see the change as we shift from being a software engineering only shop as to having a more balance of distribution of different programs and a fairly even distribution in terms of the number of graduates there. Full-time enrollments going up, fairly steady. We sort of plateaued in the last couple of years at this 360 level, but that's okay. Again, the balance between undergraduate up a little, graduate down a little, keeps things steady in some ways. Again, it's been you see the different programs have different profiles, but there's an overall, except for this initial dip in computer engineering here and some of the ups and downs in software engineering, pretty much up motion among almost all programs. If we look at that in detail here, again, you can see the cumulative enrollment going up. You see programs like EE sort of holding their own. Programs like computer engineering, they're all sort of holding our own. Computer science coming on board and software engineering also growing over those years. In the graduate programs, you see as new programs come on board, how they start to add individuals. But again, for instance, some of them, the unmanned systems program, it's 8-10 students. It's not real big, and it stays that way. Software engineering continues, computer engineering These all stay fairly stable. Systems engineering, we have a little issue with poaching from our worldwide. We help them stand up an online version of the systems engineering. We helped them stand up the systems engineering program in the first place. They stood up an online version of it, and now they sometimes cobble our students away. Students come and they're like, oh, well, I can go over there and take it, and it's cheaper tuition. Here's the percentages, and again, you just see that we're getting a fairly decent distribution here among all the different programs, so that's a pleasant thing. Looking to the future, these are comparing as of last Tuesday on the 14th of April. We can compare the number of applications, the number of admits, and the number of people who have deposited. There's one further category after they deposit. They really matriculate when they register for programs. And you can see that we're not seeing the kind of jump in deposits relative to the kind of jump in admits. And even with the kind of jumps in admits, it's not as big as the jump in applications. And so in some ways we're becoming more selective. Even as we're becoming more selective, we're admitting more people. So our admissions people, our enrollment management people are doing a good job of generating applications. We're getting a better chance to be more selective. But of those we're admitting, even though we're admitting more people, as of last week, the numbers weren't up proportionally to what the admits were. Now, what's really going to happen in the fall is anybody's guess. And graduate looks down in the fall, but graduate numbers never are as accurate in terms of point-in-time predictions. You just have to, because a lot of people just make up their mind at the last minute, and then they're, I'll get in, it's easy. And we work with students who can do that. But again, the number of deposits for the fall is not going up in the graduate. Now, my own intuition is that graduate enrollment is likely to go up given a bad economy. So if the economy ends up truly sucking over the next few years, that creates a situation where people are incentivized to stay in school until the economy improves. And so I think you might see graduate admissions go up. But we could also take a hit on the undergraduate side, or at least not grow the way we have been growing. Here's the way these charts look. I put these all on the same scale. These are just the raw count numbers. So you can see the various sizes of interest in terms of the applications. So, both, computer science continues to grow as an area of interest. Some of that is cyber. We know that's interest in cyber. And again, students don't know what software engineering is when they come in out of high school, so there's still that issue. So you can just look at the difference between the number of applications for software engineering relative to computer science. We're still seeing comparable numbers between electrical engineering and computer engineering. So I think, and that will probably continue, would be my guess. Double E's had a relative comeback compared to where it was a decade or so ago. Double E felt like it was getting eaten by mechanical for lunch. But I think things have evened out more recently. I think both AI, ML, and autonomy as terms of vehicles, even though mechanical has a strong interest in vehicular technologies, I think the control parts of that clearly fall into the computing and electrical engineering realm. And so I think that's part of the reason you still see a Double E holding strong. So again, we'll talk about these more when we're all in one place.